Welcome to the Unveiled Podcast. I'm your host, Meagan Murphy, and I'm here with no other than Bodhi Deva Ma.
Hello.
Hi, how
Happy
are
to be
you?
here.
So this is literally my first solo interview without my podcast, and the universe couldn't have chosen a more divinely placed interviewee. And I kind of want to start with, the synchronicity that led us to this day. And it happened at this exact same time last year. I started having these like spontaneous ayahuasca things happening to my body for like 4 weeks straight. And I knew what it was because I'd already experienced ayahuasca before. And that's how I was able to like relate the two. And then I realized that I had been seeing you for like several years at different spiritual events. I remember one was this holotropic breathing event we were at. And I just kept being like pulled to you for some reason, right? And I remember walking up to you at that event and I said, "Hi, I'm Meagan." And I don't know why I'm coming up to you, but my son's named Bodhi too. And you just looked at me like, okay. I didn't know if you were feeling it yet or not. But then take you back to last summer, right? Whenever that started happening, I kept getting the hit from what I call my guides, God, whatever you want to call it. Call Bodhi. Call Bodhi. She can help. Because I'm Googling all these things, like what's happening to me, and I called you, and you were the only one that could calm me enough and meet me where I was in that moment.
I remember.
Yeah. So I would like to just, share this synchronicity because here we are a year later. And now I feel like you are, I guess, initiating me into this calling. I've been fighting this calling. I've never really wanted to be a podcaster. I've been just kind of pulled into it. And I would have never done this first interview if it wasn't for you. Being in my reality and being able to hold that space that you are able to hold for people like myself to make them feel safe. And so let's talk about Bodhi.
Well, it's been an honor to be a part of your process with this. And I've gotten to watch you, peel back those layers and systematically start to detach yourself from, kind of your ego or your sense of, oh, this is me, and really trusting that this is spirit and that this is something that's coming through you. And it's been such an honor to get to be a part of you kind of trust falling into that and just allowing this to move the way it is. And so I'm so excited to be your first guest.
Thank you. I know we're going to be talking about what you facilitate, which is the integration of ketamine treatments, but I kind of want you to tell the world, who is Bodhi? What does Bodhi do besides just the treatments? Because I remember one of our conversations, I asked you what you do. And if I recall, you were like, you really couldn't give me a title.
Yeah.
And that was the first person, I have chills. That was the first person I'd ever spoken to that wasn't, I guess, defining themselves by what they do. So if you can kind of explain that to everyone and myself, who is Bodhi and how did she get into all this? And what is it she all offers? Because there's just so much stuff that you offer, and it's hard to put it into words. So please.
So, wow, how did she get into all of this? I would say that when I was 19, I grew up in a very traditional, very conservative environment. And I had a lot of trauma that had happened that year, and I was what I now know completely shut down into dorsal shutdown, meaning I was numb, couldn't function. And someone offered me psychedelics, and I kind of grew up in Nancy Reagan's "Just Say No to Everything," and I thought it was like hard drugs, but because I didn't care at that point if I died, I decided to try it. And in that moment of trying it, I had a 180-degree turn in my awareness. I kind of popped out of that depression, and I was like, I need to understand what just happened to me. And then that summer, this was like 1996, I believe. Wow. That summer, I explored more with mushrooms and started to have these spiritual experiences that really I had no framework for understanding. So I had been a communications major, and I switched to philosophy and religious studies because that was, we didn't really even hardly have the internet at that point,
Yeah.
And I was like, somebody had to understand what I'm seeing and feeling here. And, they can't just be the drugs, like, because this feels more real than my life feels, the experiences that I was having. And this was, opening me up to seeing energies and understanding the connection of everything. And I was getting these, what I now call downloads, but I had no idea what was happening, but I knew it was really important. And then I've gone through this path, and much like you, I was, at first, I was terrified to tell people that I, even use psychedelics, but that the experiences that I was having with these downloads and this kind of wisdom that was coming through was real. And I felt like everybody was going to think I was crazy.
Yes.
And certainly, and then in 1996, where I was living was Tennessee, and there wasn't anyone or anything that I could point to that would even support what I was going through anywhere in my environment. And I think that happens a lot with people as they wake up into their spiritual awakening. And of course, the environment that you've been in is at a different frequency than when you start to wake up. You're looking around and you're like, I don't fit here anymore.
Yeah, like it's like old clothes that are too tight.
And things start to, fall away, and then you start to find yourself into an environment where it's more supportive of the frequency and the way that you're seeing the world. And so I went through that process over the years, and it led me, much like you, like I had no idea what I was doing as far as like where it was leading me. But over the years, I became a Reiki practitioner and a yoga practitioner, and then I became a therapist. And then at some point, I had some really impactful experiences that led me to shamanism. I went to Central and South America and studied there. And that's where I was shown that I needed to work with psychedelics as a healing tool. Wow. And of course, from, my personal experience, it had been very much a healing tool. But like everyone in those first years, you're using it recreationally. You don't really know what you're doing. And I had made a lot of mistakes, personally with those, with working with, psychedelics. And so it became my passion to help people learn how to use this safely and in a safe container, and to create those safe containers. And but I didn't know at the time when I got kind of tapped to do this. This was 2016, and I was living in Guatemala, and of course psychedelics were illegal.
They were legal, you said?
Illegal in the United States at that point. Yeah. And this was before, becoming a ketamine therapist was really a public option, right. And so Spirit was like, this is what you're supposed to be doing with your life. And I was like, I'm not doing that. And I had, I had teenagers. I was like, that's illegal. And also I'm not doing that. And I didn't, I came back but it was like, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. And I dug my heels in, and I was like teaching yoga classes, and, at that point I had dropped out of being a therapist because I had been in community mental health, and it was just, it was so out of alignment with what I knew actually helped people heal.
Right.
And I felt so in a box that in as a therapist, and the way that I'd been trained initially, I was like, I can't do this. I don't feel like this is actually helping people. And it felt like it was a lie. It felt like it was fake. Yeah. And so I stopped doing that. But then Spirit was like, nope, you're going back. And but luckily in 2018, Michael Pollan's book was released, and it brought all of the research around psychedelics back out into the mainstream. And then it really opened up the path for therapists to be able to work with psychedelics. And ketamine was never illegal. It had been initially a
cat tranquilizer, right?
Well, it also does. It also can be used for that. Yeah. But it had initially been an anesthesia. Oh. And it's a very, very safe anesthetic. And for example, if a baby were to go in and need their arm set in the ER, a lot of times they would give ketamine so that they would dissociate, and they could set the arm, and the baby would be comfortable. And they've used it, like I said, since the 60s, but then they did some post-op studies in the 90s on people who had gone in, they were just trying to see how people did after anesthesia. And they started finding this pattern that when they'd given them ketamine, people who'd had long-term depression that had been treatment resistant, they came out of their operation, but because they'd had ketamine, all of a sudden they're like, and also I don't have the depression I've always had. Wow. And people were like, that's weird. And so they started studying that, and they realized that at lower doses where you're not going completely out, you can actually have a psychedelic effect, which also creates a pharmaceutical effect in the brain that works really well for long-term treatment-resistant depression and also suicidality. And actually for many people, if they're having like really bad suicidal thoughts or thoughts that are really, really impacting them negatively, just one infusion of ketamine can pop them out of that in a good way. So once they started to realize that, they started opening this up. This field started to open up as, legal, above ground, not going to get in trouble, working with psychedelics. And as that path opened up, I moved toward it. And so now I do have my license, and I do work at a clinic here with some beautiful doctors. They have a beautiful set and setting.
What's the name of that clinic?
It's Derive Health. Yep. And here in Charlotte. And what I love about that clinic is the doctors and nurse practitioners and nurses that work there all really understand the holistic view around psychedelics, because there are many ketamine clinics where they're really just looking at it from the pharmaceutical benefits, right? So they have people just sitting in chairs in a room, and it's very clinical, and maybe they give them some headphones or whatever, and they just kind of watch them to make sure that their blood pressure's good and that they're okay, but they're just in kind of a clinical setting, just receiving this infusion. And while that is beneficial on a pharmaceutical level, what's really beneficial with psychedelics is if you take into consideration the set and setting, the environment that you're in, the music that you're playing, the people that are there, the energies that are in the room, all of those things impact the psychedelic experience. And if you co-create that well, you really allow the person to deepen into their healing and access really profound insights, and as well, being able to access parts of themselves that they can't normally. And so they kind of look at ketamine therapy. Some people say that it's a lot like doing, as far as trauma work, it's like going to the doctor and getting a root canal with or without anesthesia. So we can go in and do the trauma work. And my first, what Spirit guided me to first was to actually become a certified trauma specialist before I even started working as a psychedelic therapist, because what I had seen from my personal work with the medicines and in South America was, oh, wow, this really does bring up your trauma. And if I'm going to be helping people with that, I need to know how to really work with trauma, because it doesn't always bring up the trauma, but when it does, you need to know what you're doing. So that was kind of my path, was working with psychedelics, working with it ceremonially, learning the traditional ways, then coming out and integrating like clinical trauma therapy, which integrated somatics, energy work, and really not even to be woo-woo, it's Eastern medicine, which is powerful medicine.
Right.
And then the traditional kind of more clinical Western ways of doing therapy. And I brought all of that to the psychedelics. And so it kind of all tied back together with
connected.
my healing and bringing all of these, more holistic ways of looking at it. And so at Derive, they bring all of that together too. And that's why I love working at that clinic, because they're really thinking about all the parts and that allow for healing. Because it's not just the medicine. As a matter of fact, the medicine is a very small part of the healing with
the ketamine.
Like the ketamine, yeah.
So yeah, like when I did ayahuasca, like I was like purging, throwing up these like for 6 hours. Like I was facing everything about like I faced my bliss God self, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life, right? Or existence. And then I'd face every single fear, like head on, and all of my darkness as well, to where my body was like doing the contorting and all that stuff. That's how I knew, hey, this is ayahuasca, spontaneous. I got chills. A spontaneous event going on right now, because I'm having the same symptoms as I was when I took the plant medicine in South America. But I guess, how do you help integrate the ketamine process? I know that we had a session booked, and then, of course, Meagan's fears created a reality that stopped that session. And I want to also go into that as well, because I think there's a lot of fear around ketamine.
Yeah.
My mother, for example, when she found out I was going to do it, oh, don't do it. Matthew Perry died on that shit. And I'm like, wait a second. Did he die off the ketamine, or was he in a situation in a hot tub where he drowned and he was overusing it with doctors that were handing it to him,
right. Yeah.
in a non-professional manner, right? But my ego was hanging on for dear life at that time, and literally caused me to have 2 wrecks in the same week to not come do it.
Yeah.
So what are some of the fears you think that people have, or misunderstandings about ketamine treatment? And
well, I think the biggest misunderstanding with not just ketamine, but all psychedelics, is that it's going to be kind of a quick fix,
Oh, yeah.
That it's going to be something that that it's going to be something that, I can go take these mushrooms, or I can go take this ayahuasca, and it's going to fix me. And I think that is the most dangerous thing about it, is because people think that. And what's actually healing you is yourself, your inner healer. What the medicines do is opens your what's called your default mode network. It kind of turns down the volume on what you would call your ego, your defense mechanisms,
your identity.
Yeah. And it turns down the volume on that, so that your actual more authentic awareness and other things that you've suppressed about yourself can now rise into your consciousness. And it's you doing the healing. The medicine just assists you in getting out of your own way to a certain degree, and allowing yourself to see. And it does help with some nervous system things and some, pharmaceutical based things. But if you are not doing the integration pieces, it won't stick. It just becomes a really interesting experience you had 3 months ago, but your life doesn't transform unless you transform it. And that's like my number one thing that I like to say to people is like, you are the medicine. And if you're not doing the integration work and taking what you got from the experience and bringing it into your practical life and implementing the things that it showed you, it's not going to do what it can do for you. Now, sometimes people have this
Satori.
Moment where it's like, I went down and did ayahuasca, and then I never did heroin again. And I've been trying to get off of heroin forever. Those are, and the media trying to destigmatize psychedelics have really focused on those experiences, like these woohoo, wow, one and done kind of experiences. But what I know for a fact from working with these medicines and seeing many, 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 many people go through this is if that happens, it's because they were already doing a whole bunch of stuff, and that was the last, like,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it just, the medicine doesn't do the work for you. So I think that's the most, like, misunderstood thing, I think, with all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that there are some really valid fears around ketamine.
Tell me those.
That it's addictive.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
It's a dissociative. And because it's a dissociative and not a normally working psychedelic like other psychedelics.
Like shrooms or, yeah.
Exactly. It's working on different parts of the brain. These are working with, you know, your serotonin system or the serotogenic system. And this creates a dissociative experience. And this and nitrous oxide are both dissociatives, and they're both used as anesthesias, and they both can give you a psychedelic experience. But what they do is they make you not, you know, they remove you kind of from your body to a certain extent. And that way you get this more observer, objective capacity to see yourself, which is really great. But in daily use or using it outside of a clinical environment, it would be very easy to start using it to get away from things rather than to go toward them.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And many, many, many of us have gone down a really weird path about that, you know, thinking, oh, this is like super healing me. But then it's like your ego tricks you into thinking like, oh, I'm using this for this. And then you're actually getting away from things.
It's kind of like my addiction to the self-help stuff I was doing for 15 years.
You can get addicted to a lot of things. And I mean, I've seen people try to use other psychedelics, you know, to get away from things and to a varying degree of benefit to them. But it's harder, especially with things that are natural like mushrooms, ayahuasca. You know, there's not the physical addiction that can occur, but also, you know, they put you in your nervous system. They make you have to see things and feel things when you're in that. And so it makes it less likely that you're going to use that to cope with things you don't want to see, you don't want to feel. So I think there's something very valid about, you know, that you do not want to be messing with it outside of therapy or clinically, you know, especially people who already have those addictive tendencies.
Which I do.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and so, but in the clinic, you know, under medical supervision and with,
proper dosage
and all of that stuff.
And to help integrate.
You're right. It is extremely healing and extremely valuable, even for people with addictions.
Yeah. Can it actually help people release their addiction though?
Yes. I mean,
fully.
For sure, because mostly, you know, according to Gabor Mate's work around addiction and what we understand around addiction is that it's typically because of suppressed trauma, and you're trying, and the addiction is a response to not knowing how to process that, you have unprocessed emotions, unprocessed triggering in your body. You know, your body's in this constant state of fight or flight due to, trauma usually. And it's just at some point in your development, you realize, oh, if I do this thing, it's going to make me feel better. And at first it works, right?
For the minute.
Right.
Yeah.
And then over time, it actually kind of collapses on you. And then sooner or later, you got to face whatever was underneath that. And so the psychedelics certainly can help you deal with what's underneath it, so you don't have that as a response. You don't need that as a response, and so it can help, yes. And I certainly things like ibogaine and ayahuasca are very, very well known for helping people with.
What was the first thing you said?
Ibogaine or iboga. I've
never heard of that.
Yeah, it's a plant that is used in Africa typically. That's one of the very strongest psychedelics, very potent.
More than Aya, or is it?
Yeah, and it needs to be medically supported because it really goes in and works on you deep. And you need like medical.
Have you done it?
No, I haven't. It's
That's
one of the
one
only
thing
ones
you
I
won't.
haven't. No, I will. I just haven't had the opportunity because you have to go out of the country to do it. You can't, people don't do it here. And like ayahuasca, but maybe even more importantly than ayahuasca, because of the danger of like, it can really put your body under a lot of stress.
Oh, yeah.
You really need to be with a practitioner who's facilitating, who genuinely knows the tradition, the lineage, how to work with the medicine, and to make sure that you're safe, you know? Yeah. And so I don't mess around with that. Like I want it, like when I do it, I want it to be somebody that isn't of that lineage, understands that plant spirit, understands how to hold that space, and make sure that everybody in the container is really safe.
Right.
And I just haven't met anybody yet that I feel that way about.
Yeah, exactly.
But if I'm supposed to do it, it will come. Yeah.
So I know you have done the ketamine IV because you're facilitating.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
What was your experience with it the first time you did it? And was there a veil that was lifted for you that you were like, oh, wow, this is it. Like, I have to facilitate with this because this changed this in me. Mm-hmm. And I know how like important this is. And was there a moment in that?
Well, so the first time that I had done it was in my training. So as a psychedelic therapist in the training program that I went in, they had you do 7 different sessions. That's cool. And we did it with all of the different routes of administration. So there are lozenges you can take. You can take it nasally. You can take it as a shot, like an intramuscular shot, or you can take it as an IV. And so they had us try all those different ones so we could see how that hits you different. Oh. And then, but the very first one that I did was the IV, and it was the most relaxed that I had ever been in my life. And my nervous system just completely like felt normal, I guess. And then there was just this overwhelming kind of peace and just love and gratitude. And there was a lot of kind of unprocessed emotions that I had been suppressing that were kind of on the docket. You know, they were on backlog. Yeah. Because I had been just going, doing all the stuff, not really paying attention to my own feelings. And so, of course, those had to come up. And
did you have like a physical thing happen? Or
I didn't, but about 30% of my clients do.
30. Mm-hmm. And what kind of physical symptoms do you see?
So you can see shaking, a lot of just like tremoring, like kind of discharges, you know. And what I call how I perceive that is that it's just your nervous system's discharging energy that's been held in the fascia and the muscles and in the tissues. And in the nervous system. And so your body might shake, you might yawn a lot, you might cry, you might, in some cases even feel like you need to make noises, like certain kinds of tones or sounds that come out.
To get it out. Mm-hmm. All that stuck energy.
Yeah, and it's just old, stuff that needs to be processed. And it's kind of great, because the ketamine turns the part of your mind, it turns down the volume of that part of your mind that is keeping you from doing what your body needs to do to discharge the energy.
Oh, yeah.
And so as soon as the mind's out of the way.
It gets your conscious mind out.
Right. The conditioned conscious mind kind of gets turned down. I mean, it's still there and it's not like you're completely out of your mind, but it's just not as strong. Mm-hmm. And as soon as the mind gets out of the way, the body's like, oh God, thank God that thing's out of here. And it's just like, okay, we got to do this and we got to let this sound out. It's like, I've been trying to do this since you were 3. And so it's great because it really releases a lot on an energetic level and on just a physiological level where people are releasing tensions that their body's held for maybe their whole life, and the way humans are, as all other natural wild animals that have nervous systems, when they get stressed, they shake and they discharge, or they run as hard as they can. You know, they're burning off the adrenaline, they're burning off the cortisol, they're letting their body finish out whatever needed to be finished out in that stressful moment. But humans, we're hit with stress after stress after stress, but we're still having to like
Maintain.
keep a smile on our face and not act like a fool in the middle of Walmart or whatever. And we hold those things, you know, we don't let ourselves, if our body wants to shake, we don't let it, you know.
Because we fear judgment.
Right. We don't want people, and when you're a little kid, you know, it's so interesting. So many of the things that we've discovered in frameworks like brain gym or in energy medicine, where people are understanding kind of the nervous system and how the brain works and how the different hemispheres work. As we've been discovering like what works best, it's things that you see 3-year-olds doing, like standing there and just kind of like moving their arms back and forth, or, you know, how kids will like lay on the floor and do their legs back and forth like this, you know, where they'll get their belly on the floor and do this. All of that stuff, that brain, it needs that to like balance itself out. And now they've done all these studies and it's like, crap, all the little kids were already doing that. But you're like,
we train them out of it.
Exactly. Sit still. Why are you doing that? You know, because they're just like sitting there flapping around, you know, and you just think, and we've been trained, don't sit there and flap around. And we tell them not to sit there and flap around. But it's actually their body's discharging the energy, and and so we are socialized out of that. And
I'm doing it to my son right now.
Right.
Because he drives me crazy because he's so full of energy. And I'm like, just sit still, you know, like, and I feel this guilt.
Right.
And it's because I'm aware of what I'm doing.
Right.
I know I'm training him out of being himself. And it's just to protect him. But
exactly. And it's to protect him because you know that if he just acts like that in the middle of Walmart or in the middle of, you know, school or whatever, that he's going to be shamed and you know, people are going to treat him bad. And so it's like we're put in a weird situation, right?
Yeah.
Because
how do you navigate it?
Right. That's like, I'm sorry I let my kid flap around, and you're going to have to too, first grade teacher. Right. You know, and so and it's not fair to them if you don't teach them the social rules, but it's also, as a culture, we keep ourselves from doing what we need to do to keep ourselves healthy, you know, in that way. So, but we're opening up to all of that. But the beauty of the psychedelics is that as soon as that part of your mind that's been conditioned to hold all of this gets kind of turned down, the body does what it needs to do. And it's really pretty phenomenal, you know, and it can be scary looking and it can sound really weird. And, you know, it's very vulnerable sometimes, you know, for people, but it's amazing.
Well, I will say my co-host, Laura, she's not here today, but her fiance's mother has had fibromyalgia for literally her whole life and PTSD, you know, and she's done the treatment 10 times recently. And Laura is like, she is a different person, Meagan. She is like calm now. And I'm going to say this, she is taking half of the medication that has been prescribed to her for many, many years. And that might upset a lot of people, but I am sort of against the whole pharmaceutical pill thing because I was put on them at a very early age, all the way to 18. And I realized at a young age that this was just masking me, right? So I feel like if this is powerful enough to help someone who's been on these powerful medications for, you know, 40 years to cut their dose in half, have a new identity within 10 treatments, there is something to this medicine.
Oh, for sure.
And I just got chills again. And that's why I felt like I had to bring you on as like the first episode, because I was like, this has to get out here. Like, people can't be fearing this like they are, right? Like, because I am fearing it. I stopped myself from doing this.
You know, it's interesting. You know, I hear a lot of people say that once they kind of get a chance to talk to me, they start seeing that, you know, opening up to like the woo-woo. And It's interesting, you know, I was telling you like it was more than 25 years ago when I started having my spiritual awakening, and I wasn't in an environment that was supportive of that at all. And so I remember being so scared to expose myself to the world, that how I actually felt and thought about these woo-woo things. And it's so phenomenal, though, that if you really study Eastern religions, indigenous cultures, and truly like just the science of it, what we're discovering with quantum physics and epigenetics, these things that these 5,000-year-old people knew that Westerners would call woo-woo are like literally the cutting edge of science now.
Mm-hmm.
The things that, you know, around manifestation and how we're creating our reality. I mean, this is, scientists are like, oh, yeah, it's kind of true. You know, when you look at something that's actually making it be that.
They're not
you
that
know?
crazy.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, that's actually not crazy. You know, and Western culture got so disconnected. And it's so sad because it was a cultural trauma,
Mm-hmm.
you know, by the way that we started to see ourselves as separate from our body and our mind, because of the kind of Cartesian or Descartes thought, you know, it's like, I think, therefore I am. And it was like, there's this separation of body and mind that didn't occur in other cultures. But a part of that came from us being disconnected from the earth. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the kind of religious teachings that happened after, especially Roman, like there were different things that happened over the last few thousand years that made Westerners stop being a part of the cycles of nature and the earth. And certainly the church, and I'm not saying specifically Christianity, but the church, the way that the church settled it was like, your body is sinful, your body is bad. The earth, if you're doing these earth-based things like herbalism or, you know, following the moon cycles, rituals, this kind of stuff, you're a witch and you're going to go to hell, right? And so it was this systematic disconnect from your body and the earth.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, so that started first, and then people started really believing in that. And then through the Middle Ages and through the, you know, horrors that happened as the church came in and was taking over different indigenous populations and causing a lot of harm, people finally at some point were like, you know what, we're not going to believe in that either. That's a bunch of BS. And also what? And so then it swung back the whole other way on the mental side of like, well, if I don't see it and I can't measure it, it ain't there.
Well, it's funny, before you brought this up, I had a question pop in. It was like, what would Jesus and the Buddhists say about psychedelics and treatment?
Yeah. Well,
yeah. I mean, I don't know. Have you ever been asked that?
No.
I don't know where
that's
it came
an interesting
from.
thought. So I can't speak for what I think that Jesus would say, in the fact that, like, I grew up fundamentalist Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And I left Christianity as an organized religion in my late teens. And then I started studying Buddhism and Eastern religions and Buddhism and Hinduism mainly in my 20s, and I've actually lived in a Buddhist temple and been, so it went deep into that. So I can probably speak to that more, and I can also speak to more, especially what North and South American indigenous cultures might think of that kind of thing from a perspective. So in Buddhism, the organized religion, they say that anything that is mind manifesting, you should probably stay away from it. So that would be like,
explain that a little more.
They call it mind manifesting meat, and how we would translate is like intoxicants. Okay. So it's making mind do things differently than the way that it normally does.
So they would be against psychedelics.
And especially like in Zen Buddhism, there are very specific sects of Buddhism. Just like in Christianity, there are different sects. There's like the Methodists, and there's the Baptists and the Catholics or whatever, and in Buddhism it's the same. And in many sects of Buddhism, they think that if you're doing anything to mess with your mind in that way, you're opening yourself up to confusion or, and you're not, because it's really about training your mind and your thoughts and
into purity,
embodying, in a certain way. Do I think that's what the Buddha would say about it? I don't know.
No.
You know what I mean? Just in the same way that I think that Christianity, a lot of the forms of Christianity, do I think that Jesus would approve of how they are taking everything?
Yeah.
I would also say, I don't know. Yeah. I would also say,
that's
I don't know.
question. I didn't know. Yeah. I'm like, where the hell did this come from? And I don't know why, but I guess that's what I'm here for.
But I think it is an interesting inquiry. And, I feel like at this point, though, especially in Western culture, people are so conditioned in a way that really has cut them off from their body, from the earth, and from something spiritual. It's like, we need something.
Yeah.
And we need something fast.
Well, especially with AI coming.
Yeah.
And the disconnect that's happening right now with love. Mm-hmm. I'm noticing, I'm going to go into that on a whole other episode, but we really do need something, like you're saying, because we're getting sicker and sicker, I feel, as in disconnected.
Right.
Not sicker as in, physically, whatever, but like emotionally.
Yeah, mentally and and then and it does trickle down into physical illness.
Exactly.
And how we treat our bodies, and then it creates all kinds. Western culture, and especially in America, because we are so disconnected, we're so productivity driven. We do not look at things in cycles and seasons. We do not look at things in balance in that way. It's like, go, 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 get it done.
Yeah.
The ways that we treat ourselves and the ways that we've disconnected are definitely making us sick, and not only as individuals but as a culture. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason that psychedelics is seeing this renaissance right now is because on a higher level, it's kind of like I don't know, the emergency
the intervention.
The emergency intervention, for our culture. It's like, okay, what are we going to do with these people? They are so conditioned and they are so far off. And it's like, what can we do to help? And it's like, okay, this infusion. And it's interesting because this same infusion happened in the 60s, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, these things opened up. And in the 60s, people just started opening wide up.
Right.
But then immediately, governmental forces and
close this down.
Yes, because it's not socioeconomically supportive of that machine, for people to actually be in alignment with their authentic self, to be living from that.
We're too powerful.
Right.
Yeah.
And to be aware of themselves in that way. Who on earth is going to go work 9 to 5 for a corporation or in an industry that's hurting them just for money?
If they're aware,
if they're really truly aware of who they are and what's going on with them, and they're in touch with their body and they're in touch with the earth and they're in touch with spirit, no one would do that. But they need people. They needed, especially at that period of time, people to do that. But because things are changing so much, and especially after COVID, it was so interesting, because it's like the whole world shut down for a few months and everybody's like, wait a minute. I can stay home with my kid. I don't think I've seen my kids ever. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. Exactly.
And they're like, and wait a minute, I like working from my house. Wait, I don't even have to go to that building.
Right.
I'm not doing that anymore. And literally corporations had to change their whole policies when everything came back on. Because people were like,
screw this.
I'm not doing this.
They started seeing their worth is what happened, because they weren't caught up in the rat race.
Right, because it was just going and going and going and going. And then when it stopped long enough, it freaked everybody out. But then they were like, it shook them awake in a certain way.
Right.
That was one benefit of that just kind of changing. Yeah. And then and there was a huge wave in the spiritual world of people kind of waking up that you would never think,
Oh, yeah.
that just that hit like that, and that just stopped for a minute caused everybody to like, wait, what is actually happening here? And there was a huge wave of people starting to try to discover, just personal self-discovery, and then also discovering spirituality. And I think we're going to go through several more deep waves of that culturally. We're taking some pretty hard hits, but I think that the hits are very precise to waking us up, so that we can start to wake up into what I call our vertical axis. And like the meditation that we did in the beginning, I see humans, and this is based on ancient knowledge too, our spine and our energy flows up and down, and ideally we're connected at top to spirit,
right,
and to the earth. And that's where we're getting our energy from, is the earth and spirit. But because we've been cut off, we've been getting it this way,
right,
horizontally.
outside,
outside of ourselves, with addictions, with other people, taking energy back and forth with other people. And to some degree, we're always going to have that code of interdependence.
Yeah.
But learning again to get connected up and down like that, I think that's, and then being at your own core and finding out what your personal frequency is. I think the psychedelics really helps with that, because you have this access to that, like, oh, there's something going on inside of me, because we're so distracted by the outside.
It removes the guard.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the most important thing here, is like, we are so disconnected to the body. And I think this medicine is the one thing, well, maybe not the one thing, but one of the things that can help us reconnect to the body, to where we can settle down and long enough to be able to get the guidance we need to get on the path that we were meant to walk. And I know we've been talking for an hour now, and I don't want to keep going with your time here, but I just want to, if you were to, I kept getting this question about the mirror. I'm noticing that everything is a mirror, right? And I don't know if you believe in that, but this is my final question. What do you think people that have used the medicine are mirroring for the collective right now?
That's interesting.
I don't even understand the question fully, but I know that there's something in the mirror, even if it's for you, like when you're integrating. Have you ever had a mirror moment?
Oh, all of them.
See? Okay, thank you. Okay, that's why it's here. This question's here because everything's a freaking mirror. So if you could leave us with, what was one of your most profound mirror moments that you realized during an integration session? And then I would love for you to leave us with your final thoughts on whatever it is that you feel called to leave us with.
So I mean, I feel like, oh, wow. There's so many. There's this weird thing when you're working with people, coaches, therapists, whatever, that because it is kind of a mirror all the time, you're attracting people that are working through kind of the same things, and then maybe you're working through that, and maybe you're a few steps ahead of that, and then you see them kind of just show up. And so there's always that type of mirroring that happens. But I believe that everybody that I ever come in contact with is a part of my healing and my path, just as much as I am theirs. And even those small moments, these seemingly mundane interactions are a part of my awareness and healing, and bringing all of the parts of myself back to myself, And so, and no less in these medicine work, and maybe, and getting to be in the side seat and create safety for people as they get into these super vulnerable and incredible spaces. The first time somebody like, I remember this one guy, he was suicidal. I did not think he was going to make it. He was in his 20s. And he really didn't have any reason to either. There was nothing I could tell him about his life in that moment that I was like, yeah, you should want to keep doing this.
Oh,
I mean, you know what I mean? Like that, and that's the horrible thing. You know, he's telling me his life, and I'm like, I want to kill myself too.
Damn
like,
it.
You know what I mean? Like, I can't really even tell you.
Oh.
And I will never forget the first time that we did ketamine. He took it and he saw a light inside of himself, and he never knew that there was light ever. And I can say right now he is thriving and he is happy. And once he went through those ketamine sessions, he has taken on who he really is. He's found interests. He's now in a relationship, which he had never been in before. Like, I mean, it just completely changed, and definitely the medicine helped him. But that moment of sitting there watching it, right now when I look back on it, it was kind of like when Harry Potter, finally came out of the closet, and he's like, wait, I'm magical. I'm not this little piece of crap that I thought it was, you know? Like, that was kind of the way it felt, you know? And then watching him go through the ketamine treatments, and he's like, wait, what? No, it's not anything like I thought it was, And it was just getting his conditioning and his trauma and his mind out of the way long enough to see who he actually was.
He couldn't even believe it.
Right. He couldn't believe it. Yeah, I couldn't, and just you're sitting here watching somebody just,
It's
like open up. It was really a miracle. And obviously, and that's just one, that was really potent.
The deepest one.
Yeah, it was just so potent because I was so sure that, like, if this person will ever want to cling to this life, have any grappling points into this life.
What did that awaken in you?
It got me turned back into shamanism.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I had been studying and, but I'd kind of set it aside to focus more on the clinical therapy work, and seeing him go through his process and opening up. He was like, in the integration sessions, he was like, well, I need to know about the shamanism stuff. And I'm like, well, I don't know anything. That's above my pray grade. You need to go talk to a real shaman. And he's like, no, but I want to talk to you. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to dust off myself and my books and, do that. Yeah. So it definitely motivated me to deepen, and certainly now, it's been like over a year and a half now, I guess, or at least over a year since that process started with him. And I've grown tremendously spiritually and learned to trust. And this was something, and this is what I want to leave it with. Going through this process of being a psychedelic therapist, working with the medicines, I've gone into deep, dark spaces with it too, myself, because I am that kind of person. Is my mom used to tell me, like, why do you have to fall in the ditch and crawl out? Why can't you just take the cautionary tale? And I'm like, no, I got to find out. Like, I need to know what that is. And so I've gone down my own routes of like working with these medicines into the places where it's like, oh, that was too far, or, oh, there's a boundary. And and what that has led me to is actually finding that I don't need it anymore. Yes. Like, it was a useful tool, but now, especially, I'm at that point now where I don't need that to open up and have that connection. And but I did before, because I was so conditioned. I had so much trauma, I had so much in the way, and it did help. And now I'm at the point where, like, personally, I still work with it because I'm helping other people through that. It's like midwifing people.
You're the evidence.
Right. It's like midwifing people through, but then ultimately they're the medicine. It's not about the chemical putting it in your body. In the beginning, it just opens the door for you, but it does not walk through the door for you.
It's the reflection.
You have to walk through the door, right?
Right.
It lets you see what the possibilities are.
Mm-hmm.
It opens you up, but you're the one that has to take the steps and walk through the door. And that's why integration's so important. It's actually, to me, more important than taking the medicine itself.
Yeah.
Because if you're not taking those pragmatic steps, because it opens the window of perception, you're like, oh, there's a light inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the ketamine comes off and you're like, oh, darkness is back, you know? And then it's like, well, what do I have to do to feel that light when I'm not on ketamine? Yeah. But now I know that the light's there.
I know, right. Because you felt it and you can't unfeel it.
You can't unsee it. Right. Exactly.
Because it's in your nervous system now.
Yeah. And you've had a physical experience of it. And you're like, oh, okay, I see where I'm going now. But you have to take the steps to get there. It's not going to put you there and keep you there.
Not overnight either.
You can't do it. Yeah. And so that, I think the most important thing with psychedelics is like anyone who's working with it, if you're not doing the integration work, you're losing the point.
Yeah.
And
then you're just dabbling.
Right. Well, and you're just having cool experiences and potentially, you know, just chasing
the high
or the, you know, and you got to find, I mean, I found out from experiences, like you can't just take it and take it and take it and now you're enlightened. It shows you these enlightened states. And you, without it, have to go and get yourself there. Yeah. You know, but
they just showed me Joe Dispenza.
Oh, right.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like I was going to all these events and I was listening, but I wasn't implementing.
Doing it.
I wasn't doing the work. Like I'm doing the work because I'm showing up at the freaking event, right? And playing along during the event.
Well, and I can talk about it. I can tell you everything he said, right? Yeah. But if you're not actually doing the meditations in you know, outside of that event, you know, and doing the minute by minute changing of how you're thinking, then it doesn't impact you the way that it could. Yeah. And that's literally what the therapy is for, is that okay, we saw this experience and then we have the integration session. It's like, okay, what was it showing you and how are you going to implement that? Yeah. You know, and then you just keep doing that. And, you know, and so that's, and what I have learned over these years, you know, it started off with faith. And
what were we?
Yeah, I'm about to say it. So one of my teachers, the Colombian shaman that I trained with, he said, in our tradition, we don't have faith because it implies doubt. He said, we have certainty.
Knowing.
He's like, we're certain that this is true. And because of that, I mean, even just with the Joe Dispenza stuff or just what we know with quantum physics, if you are certain that something's going to happen, there ain't no chance it ain't.
Oh, wow.
You know?
Yeah.
But if you have faith, I think maybe, and you're letting all these other thoughts in of like, well, it might not happen, or I shouldn't, hope I don't get disappointed, or all of those little things are keeping it from manifesting in front of you, you know? And they knew this. They've always known this. I literally watched.
Even Jesus, all of them talk about it.
I literally watched a real shaman move a whole entire massive thunderstorm away from a ceremony the other day.
What?
Yeah. No doubt.
Can we end with that?
Huh?
Can you tell me that story and we end with that?
Yeah. So
I was like, I don't want to end yet.
So we were having a big ceremony and there were 2 shaman running it and I was assisting in the ceremony, and this huge, and the ceremony was outdoors, and this enormous storm, big thunderclouds, filled the whole entire sky, lightning, thunder all around us, but it hadn't quite started actually raining yet. And I'm looking around and they're looking at me and I'm like, well, should we move everybody inside? I mean, and we were by like a creek and I was like, man, it could be a little dangerous, you know? And the guy goes, well, he was like, well, I'll take care of it. So he walks away from the ceremony and he has mapacho, which is an Andean tobacco, and he's smoking the tobacco and he's saying these things and he's doing this. And he walks back over and he sits down and I start pulling in everybody under the tent because I'm like, well,
Doubting over there.
Well, I just didn't know that it could happen. And then I walked back out of the tent and all of the clouds just, and then the whole entire sky was clear for the whole rest of the time. And there was no, and it wasn't just a cloud. It wasn't just like a little thundercloud. It was like a massive storm with thunder and lightning. And before the rain hit, he just talked to his guides.
Wow.
And he talked to the spirits of the wind, and he was like, hey, we're having the ceremony. Could you just like reroute for a little while? And he sat down, and I was like, well, good job. And he was like, I knew that was going to happen. And I was like, oh my God. It was really amazing.
I knew
that
was going to happen.
Exactly. That's what I said. I knew that was going to happen.
Just like, okay, well, I'll just keep going on and on. I'm going to end it there.
Yeah.
He knew it was going to happen. I just want to thank you so much for being here with me and being part of breaking me through this fear to be on my own in this calling that I'm running from too. Like you mirrored to me earlier.
Oh, yeah.
And I love you.
Oh.
And I actually want to come to Sacred Roots tomorrow.
Okay.
Is there? I've never been. I didn't even know about this until last night.
Oh, okay.
So
it'll be an interesting one tomorrow.
What is it?
It's going to be, it's a tantric teacher who's going to teach about the divine union between Mary Magdalene and Jesus Christ, because Mary Magdalene's feast day is on Tuesday. And so we're always bringing in different people from different perspectives. We don't necessarily support any of the perspectives. We're like, anybody
curious.
It's like what works for you to get in touch with spirit and get in touch with your life. And we invite different facilitators to share that so people can find their own prescription for what works for them.
And this is every Sunday,
Sunday.
From 10:30 to 12:30?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. I'm so excited. I can't wait.
Yeah.
And you're going to be there I don't know what it. Okay.
Yeah. I'll definitely be there.
Well, I'm going to sign up for the treatment. And then I'm going to come back and share my experience with it. So awesome. I appreciate you coming today. And thank you so much for being my first solo interview.
You did an amazing job.
And my mentor.
You were scared.
You're my mentor too. Like I've like I've named you that. So you don't have to keep the title or anything. But you are. You are my guided mentor. So
awesome.
But anyway, thank you so much. And until next time, follow the frequency.